Hello, my name's Greta, and today I'm going to be talking about competitive advantage, and then I'm going to introduce a topic that is called adaptive advantage. Alright, so first let me outline what I'm going to be going through today, and so first I'm going to introduce the topic. I'm going to say what is competitive advantage, and then I am going to go through the article that I read through, and then I'm going to relate that back to what we've learned about competitive advantage, and then I'm going to go through and say, is that idea still relevant to today's business world? And then I'll just do a quick summary, and then that'll be all. So, what is competitive advantage then? Well, if we're thinking from a business standpoint, competitive advantage is you want to be the best. You want to be the best at something. You want to be the fastest at something. You want to have a strong suit that carries you over your competitor. And it's pretty self-explanatory from the name. So you want to have that edge, and kind of how I think about it is, it could be a race, or it could be you're playing one-on-one with somebody. You're playing basketball against them, and are you going to be smarter? Are you going to be faster? Are you going to be stronger? And how are you going to beat that person? So when we're talking about business, there's three sort of strategies that companies use to gain that competitive advantage. So the first one is differentiation, which basically just means you have an innovative product design, or you've created a unique experience for your customers. Basically anything that sets you apart from kind of the rest of the group. And then the second strategy would be cost leadership. So that is basically just cutting costs in any way that you can so that you can provide, let's say, the best, the lowest cost for your customers. And you can do that through how effective you are in your operations and your processes. And then the third strategy is response. So how fast you respond to your customer base, and that can be your flexibility, your reliability, or your quickness, just flat out quickness. So let's first talk about differentiation, and I have a couple of examples on here, and my first one would be Apple, because Apple, they're always coming out with new features, they're coming out with new products. I mean, the Apple Watch was huge when it came out because it was so different, tracking your fitness and also tracking your calls and your texts on just your watch was a new idea. And, every year they have the launch party or whatever it's called, and they go through, this year's new features that they're introducing, or the new updates to the laptops or the iPads, and it's always keeping their fan base excited. And then the next example I have here is Tesla, because Tesla kind of revolutionized the electric car and made it sleek and modern and attractive, and now they're kind of pushing towards less of a luxury car and more of an everyday person car. And their designs are kind of what make them different. Alright, so let's talk about cost leadership now. And my first example would be McDonald's, because in their operations they cut all these costs so that they can provide some low price food that people enjoy. And then my second example would be IKEA, and that is because IKEA kind of cuts costs in their transportation. They do like flat packaging when they ship their furniture, so that it saves space and then saves money. And also the way that they build their furniture is a type of construction that saves them money, and so they can provide, some of the best prices for furniture out there. All right, so the last sort of strategy for competitive advantage is response time. And, um, my first example is something that pretty much everybody sees every day on TV. It's Jimmy John's. It's freaky fast delivery. And that kind of explains itself. And then my next example is Amazon Prime. And when Prime kind of came out with their 1 day, 2 day shipping, whatever, it was sort of a new concept that you should provide that for free or for very low cost, and that has kind of become the norm and something that businesses try to emulate now. So the question that we're sort of asking today is, how well does competitive advantage hold up in its traditional form? And the reason we're asking this question is because of basically globalization. Technology has made it way easier for us to connect to other countries, other areas of the world, and we're doing business with them, and they're part of our systems. And you know, doing that throws in a bunch of new factors into how you run your business and the predictability of the market. And so the article that I read is sort of asking, how can competitive advantage keep up with how unpredictable the business world is today? So to kind of put this in a picture, I came up with a little example. And so when I'm thinking about competitive advantage and the traditional the three strategies that help with that, I'm thinking about Michael Phelps, and that's because he's the fastest. He's winning races because he's better than the competition at something. Whether he's faster, stronger, I don't really know, but it doesn't matter. He's winning races because he's better. On the flip side of that is what the article talks about, and that's adaptability. And I included this because this is when the first time that a 16 seed beat a 1 seed in the March Madness tournament. I think it was in 2018. And they did this by having a game plan, a specific game plan to beat this absolute basketball giant. That nobody guessed that they were gonna beat this team, and they did it because they had a game plan. They did their research, they watched film, and they adjusted themselves to play this team, and they beat them. So that idea kind of leads us into what the article talks about, and the article is called Adaptability, the New Competitive Advantage. As we talked about before, the business world is becoming more uncertain, and change is happening at a growing rate. And this is all because technology is changing at an exponential rate, and there's increasing globalization. People are becoming more connected, and systems are getting more complex. And and that makes the business world more unstable, more unpredictable. Um, so the article is saying, how do we gain the advantage then, if everything is so unpredictable? So the concept that the article talks about is adaptive advantage, and that basically means that instead of creating that advantage over, dominating a certain level of business, like certain operations or processes or whatever, You're not the strongest, you're not the fastest. Instead, it's earning that advantage through fostering rapid adaptation to the changing environment around you. So basically, how fast and how well you're reacting to the changes around you. So there's 4 different capabilities of a business that the authors of this article talk about being really important for the adaptive advantage. And the first one is the ability to act on signals of change. The second one is the ability to experiment quickly and frequently. The third one is ability to manage complex systems. And the fourth one is the ability to mobilize. So the first one, reading and acting on signals of change, is pretty simple. It's you want to have the fastest data analysis, and then you want to have the fastest turnaround time with that analysis. So you're doing your analysis, and then what are you going to do about it? The article kind of gives the example of Google and how their search engines and the ads pop up because of a data analysis running in the background, and nobody manually has to change the order of the ads. It all comes through the processing system, and so that's an example of really fast flipping of data to a change. The experimenting quickly and frequently stage is pretty self-explanatory. The only thing that I have to say is that you kind of want to experiment at the lowest cost that you possibly can. So a lot of companies are trying to experiment sort of virtually instead of making the product, sending the product out, getting feedback from customers in physical formats. It's more of that's very costly. So they're trying to come up with ways to experiment without that big chunk cost. So managing complex systems is really important because, as we talked about before, globalization is happening. It's increasing. Our supply chains are expanding. They're going to different areas of the world, and our customer base are spreading out in terms of geography, and it's just important to be able to manage over such a large space. So mobilization basically just means motivating your employees and your partners and your suppliers. But it can also mean more than motivation. It can also mean just building building the trust and the respect you have with your employees. Building an environment that doesn't inhibit growth. It sort of excels in collaboration and having everybody work together and being creative. So those are the 4 functions that are important to being able to adapt quickly to the changing business world. And now I'm going to talk about how is that still relevant, or is that still relevant? So is it relevant? I would say absolutely yes. Adaptability is relevant to gaining the competitive advantage in the world of business today because it's still rapidly evolving. Things are being thrown at us that are changing the way that businesses work. For example, the pandemic came in, and businesses had to rethink a lot of their operations, and that includes working from home. They had to figure out how to do that and still be successful. And I don't think that working from home is going to go away. I think it's going to be here to stay. Some people just like it better, and it works for them better. And I think businesses are realizing that. Other things that are trends in the business world is sustainability, and how businesses are having to figure out ways to be more sustainable, because that is what consumers want, and that's what the world needs. Um, Another thing that is always changing and changing the way that businesses work is social media, and how businesses market, how they interact with their customers. Um, and then another thing is e-commerce, or let's say uh, touchless pay, or whatever it's called. You've got Apple Pay, Venmo, all that sort of um, digital exchanging of money is always changing. There's always new things coming out, and businesses have to adapt to that to keep their customers and keep them happy. So, in summary, I have on here that having the advantage in a business is like winning a race, but the race is evolving. And I think that is reflected in the article, uh, that the business world is becoming so unpredictable that we need um, adaptability to be our main focus, because it really is. It's how fast we can change um, our 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 processes and our operations to sort of beat the changes that are thrown at us from the business environment. Um, and I think maybe that the concept of competitive advantage in its traditional form with the three strategies, I think that's still, sort of relevant, but with the way that the business market is changing so rapidly, I think that adaptability is absolutely very important to prioritize in your company. And that is all for me today. Thank you so much for your time.